Hey guys, Miss Watson here to do some more SAT prep. We're going to start with three non-calculator and then I'll work through the three calculator ones. So at this point, you should have already taken the quizzes um, and now you're looking this to see the solutions. So I'm going to work each problem out just like I have for the past 2 days. Okay, so let's just go ahead and get started here. So question one, again, this is non-calculator. Says, what are the solutions of the quadratic equation? So two options here. You can use the quadratic formula, or you can factor if it's factorable. I personally always look to see if it's factorable because to me that is quicker. I'm confident in it and there's less room for error. So I see that it has a 4 in common, so I can take out a GCF. So I'm going to do that. Take out a 4, it leaves me with x squared minus 2x minus 3. And then I can further factor this to x minus 3 times x plus 1. And then solving it, I use the zero product property that says if you multiply two numbers and the product is 0, that at least one of them has to equal 0. So I'm going to set all of these equal to 0. Okay, this becomes nothing because it's not a true statement. I get x is equal to 3, x is equal to negative 1. And that is one of my option choices, and that's B. Okay, moving on to the next one. So this says, in air, the speed of sound s in meters per second is a linear function, so that's key, it's linear, of the air temperature T in degrees Celsius and is given by this formula. Okay, the question is, which of the following statements is the best interpretation of the number 331.4? Okay, so a couple things here. Right away, I know that a line is in the form y equals mx plus b. Okay, so if I line that up, 331.4, that's my b, that's my y-intercept. That's when x equals 0. And in this case, x is actually t, right? Because instead of x and y in this equation, it's t and s. Okay? So again, I know that 331.4 is my b, which is my y-intercept, is when temperature equals 0. So using that information, I go through my options, and what it's going to be is it's going to be the speed when temperature equals 0. So that's A. Okay. You should be able to eliminate C and D because it's not the increase because that's the 0.6. That's the slope. This is actually the speed. So if you plug in 0 for T, then the speed at 0 temperature is 331.4. Okay, let's move to the next one. So we're given a function here and it says the function f is defined by the equation above, which of the following is a graph of y equals opposite of f of x. So first thing we got to do is the opposite of f of x would look like this. Opposite of 2 to the power of x plus 1. Well, then distribute that negative. You get y is equal to the opposite of 2 to the power of x minus 1. Okay, so basically, which graph is this? So, a couple things. This negative means that it's reflected across the x-axis. Okay, I already know this is an exponential, and if it's reflected, that means it's flipped over. So it's going to be either C or D. So I can eliminate A and B. Okay, and now if I'm trying to decide which one it is, okay, between C and D, what the differences are the x-intercepts. I'm sorry, the y-intercepts. So there's a y-intercept right there and a y-intercept right there. So what I can do is see what the y-intercept is. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to find the y-intercept. Okay, and the y-intercept is when x equals 0. So y is equal to negative 2 to the power of 0 minus 1. So PEMDAS tells me that I do exponents first, so 2 to the power 0 is 1, so I get negative 1 minus 1, so y equals negative 2. So which one of these has a y-intercept of negative 2? And it's C. Okay, let's flip. These next three are calculator based. Okay, and actually the next two, 4 and 5, relate to the same chart. Okay, so hopefully you read that already when you did the quizzes. So let's just skip to the question itself. So number 4 says, the relationship between the monthly rental price and the property's purchase price can be represented by a linear function. So again, we're dealing with y equals mx plus b. Which of the following functions represents the relationship? So these are all in this form. And the first thing I do is I look at my options and I notice that these all have different slopes. Why that's helpful is that if I can just find the slope, and I'm confident in finding the slope, then I don't even have to worry about finding the y-intercept, right? So if I find the slope, they're all different. So right away, if I find a slope and I feel good about that slope, it matches one of them. I don't need even to calculate the y-intercept. Okay, so slope is change in y over change in x. So it doesn't really matter which two you pick. I'll pick these two, just the top two. Okay, and then I'll pick these two. Now remember, it says in the question that we're supposed to be looking at purchase price in thousands of dollars. Okay, so instead of 176,000, we're just going to change that to 176. So using those 2 points, I have 1310 minus 950. That's a change in y over the change in x. 176 minus 128. Let me double check I'm using the right numbers. Yep. Okay, let me calculate that. This is a calculator question. I get 360 over 48, which is, as a decimal, 7.5. So again, look at your option choices. Because they're all different slopes, you don't have to worry about the y-intercept. There is one that has a slope of 7.5, so D is my answer. Now, if you weren't totally confident, you could also find the y-intercept and just check that it is negative 10, or you can take any of those points above and plug it in and make sure that it satisfies that equation. Okay, moving on to the next one. Again, this relates to the same chart. So it says Townsend Realty purchased Glenview property and received a 40% discount off the original price, along with a 20% discount off the discounted price. So you have a 40% discount, and then we have a 20% discount. It says, which of the following best approximates the original price? So this one can get a little bit tricky in how to set it up. Okay, and so I kind of think of it as if you received a 40% discount, that means that you paid 60%, right? So if something costs $100, you received a 40% discount, that means you actually paid 60%. Okay, if you received a 20% discount, that means you actually paid 80%. Okay, so really, and we know that, let's see here, this is Glenview Street. So if we go to our chart, Glenview is purchase price is 140. So 140,000 is the price after all these discounts. Okay, so what you can say is let's first just call, let x equal the original price. And that's what we're solving for. So that is our unknown. So we have our original price, but then because of the 40% discount, we paid 60% of that. So multiply that by 0.6. Okay, but then we only paid 80% of that already discounted price. So now multiply this by 0.8. And what that equals is the actual purchase price, which from the chart is 140,000. Okay. So we ended up paying 80% of the already discounted price, which was 60% of the original, which is X. So if we multiply this out, we get 0.48x is equal to 140,000. Divide both sides by 0.48. And we get 291,667. That's an approximate, the one closest to it, because again, it says which of the following best approximates the original price would be B. It's the one closest to it. Okay, it's a pretty good problem. Okay, finally, number 6. Lots of words here. Okay, it says a psychologist set up an experiment to study the tendency of a person to select the first item when presented with a series of items. In the experiment, 300 people were presented with a set of 5 pictures arranged in random order. Each person was asked to choose the most appealing picture. Of the first 150 participants, 36 chose the first picture in the set. Of the remaining 150 participants, P chose the first picture in the set. If more than 20% of all participants chose the first picture, which of the following inequalities best describes the possible values of P? So again, P is the number of people that chose the first picture out of the second 150. Okay, and then this is what we know. We know that 36 people plus P chose the first picture, right? 36 people plus P out of 300. Okay, that's our ratio. Chose the first picture. And then we know that that number, it says if more than 20% of all participants, so that number is greater than 20%. So what we do here is we just move the 300 over. So multiply both sides by 300. And we get 36 plus P is greater than 0.2 times 300, which is one of our options, which is D. Right? And these all the options, all say where P is less than or equal to 150, so we can't really do anything with that. Right? So again, this says that the number of people in the first set, which is 36, plus the number of people in the second set, which is P, that chose the first picture, is greater than 20% of the total being 300. So that's greater than 20% of 300. And there we go. So that's all we have for today. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Send me an email and I'll get back to you. Thanks so much, guys. Take care.